Welcome to Dare a New Belief, a place to discover what is possible for your life after the loss of a loved one, and where you will find inspiration, insight, support, and love, and hopefully a bit of laughter to help you through your day. Now, here's your host, Nada Hogan.
Welcome to Dare a New Belief, where you will find light and life, love and joy, healing, faith, and hope. A place where you get to believe in what is possible for your life. And today I have the great honor to bring back Patricia Pat Sheveland. Pat helps those who are grieving the death of a loved one find peace and purpose to achieve long-term healing. She is a registered nurse, a Spring Forest Qigong certified trainer, and a certified life coach whose sole, S-O-U-L, whose sole purpose is to be a healing guide for those who grieve. As a child born into a grieving family, she brings a unique perspective to family grief and is a compassionate and loving support to those who are mourning the death of their loved one. Pat is also a certified funeral celebrant, serving families who choose funeral and celebrations of life services outside of a formalized church. She is the Amazon best-selling author of How Do I Survive? 7 Steps to Living After Child Loss, and she lives outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota, in a multi-generational home with her family. Thank you so much for being here with us, Pat.
Oh, thank you for having me, Nada. I'm just so honored.
This is so fabulous. So, in part 1, we were talking about you found a couple of pictures, and they happened to be of your brother Greg, who had passed away when he was an infant. But he was 6 years older than you, and you had a deep connection with him, even though he had passed away. So, listeners, please go back, because there's no way I can do any justice to try to do a synopsis of that. But that's how everything started off for Pat, as this little 5 or 6 year old girl. And then in 2012, she had this jolt of lightning where she heard Greg say to her, "I was born through you." And now this is where we're going to take off. So what happened after that plane ride with the jolt of lightning? And so here we are. You're back, you're landed, you start talking to your mom, you're sharing the book, Heaven is for Real. Your mom gets to have this connection and knowing that she gets to see Greg again. And then if we can pick it up from there, where I want to talk about how, because experiencing the loss of a child, now my daughter was 18, and I often wondered what would it be like at any age, right? Because one day or old, or 1 week, or 1 month, all of it be like, oh my God, that would be the worst. No, that would be the worst. No, it's just all the worst. So having to hold that in for, if I'm not mistaken, was it 60 years your mom? No, yeah. Longer than that. 60 years that your mom had to hold that in, hold all that information in. And then to finally be able to, I love how you said that, allow those feelings to breathe or to have air. So how was it? How did she do that? And it was, I know part of the time, it was just how it was back in the day, but how did she do that? How did she just kind of hold all that inside of her and not explode?
Well, that's a good question. Back in that, no one talked about it. I had asked her at the time, I said, did you and Dad ever talk about Greg? And this whole time of when he died, and she said, nope, never. And she doesn't recall anybody coming and comforting her. She remembers the, what I want to say, the thing at the funeral home, having the wake or whatever they called it.
Okay.
But what happened in my family, and if I can just share real quick, because this is a big part of my mom's story and something that I have seen through grief and people who are struggling with their grief, is my family had layered grief. So before my brother had died, I had a cousin who died. He was not quite 12 years old. And so it would have been a first cousin of mine. He had a ruptured appendix, and it was my grandmother on my dad's side, her first grandchild, and he died abruptly because of this, and very unexpectedly. And that was on a Saturday. A few weeks after that, his mother, my Aunt Eleanor, my dad's half-sister, she died unexpectedly from a brain aneurysm, also on a Saturday. Then, a few weeks after that, my great-grandmother died, my dad's grandmother, who lived with Bobby and Eleanor and her family. She died. She was older, so probably of old age. I'm thinking probably from a broken heart. But then she passed away, also on a Saturday. So my mom said you never wanted to answer the phone on a Saturday. Then all of a sudden, here my brother went and got his baby shots. I believe it must have been on a Friday. He got very sick immediately, and at 2 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday, he had died. So here they had four in their immediate family. So when I talked to my mom about that, I said, I feel so bad that you felt so abandoned and didn't feel that you had that comfort around you. But then I walked her through saying, however, look at what happened. There was so much layered grief. I don't know that Dad or his mother, your mother-in-law had even in them. They were in such shock over all these deaths. And then, unfortunately, she felt robbed of all the compassion, and because everybody was in a fog, terrible fog. So that was a very, and then she said she always said that she was strange. I must have been strange because people didn't come around. I must have been strange. But she had her friend Pat, who came to her after a bit and said, you need to snap out of this a little bit. You have 2 little boys that need you. So I'm assuming that my mom probably had a pretty significant depression and breakdown after Greg had died. And so she had a 3-year-old and a 15-month-old, and she needed to take care of them. And she said she was very grateful for this friend of hers who did it with great compassion, because that kind of woke her up like, okay, I do have to go on living.
Yeah. Wow.
So then she just went on with her life. And just didn't talk about it until Greg would have been 60.
Wow. It's so amazing. And I know it reminds me when my uncle died. This would have been, 1974, 75. Or maybe it was my grandmother. And they had covered up all of the mirrors and the clocks. Like and the blinds are drawn. It's so dark in the house, and it was the world just stopped. And I was still fairly young, and thinking, oh my God, this is like the worst feeling I have ever felt. And it was almost like making yourself stay in that feeling and not doing it differently. There is no other way to do it. And this was a grown person, and so there was conversation after that. But my heart just aches for your mother when you said, like, I just couldn't imagine not having support and people coming over and helping. And yes, and I would imagine a great depression, and then having 2 little kids, little ones that you're having to look after at the same time. So, oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. So you and your mom start these conversations, and then what are you discovering when you're talking with your mom? What all are you learning?
Well, I think the circumstances of Greg's death, but what I learned was, and I was studying to be a coach at the time, even though I was a corporate executive, and I'm a nurse, so I'm always curious about some of the psychology and that type of thing. But talking to my mom, I think the learning that I had was all these deep-seated feelings that never got to be expressed. Yeah. And I coined the phrase failed grief, because I felt she wasn't able to utilize her grief, or my dad and their grieving process, to find healing. It was just buried along with my brother when he was buried. So, we talked about, she had some real deep anger at, the nuns at the hospital, and how my mom found Greg when she went there after he had died, that she felt that they didn't love him and care for him as if she would have been there when he died. The abandonment, where everybody is kind of in their own stuff, and she had no one coming around and comforting her. The guilt, oh my gosh, the guilt. And as a mom, I'm sure, having gone through the death of a child, I think that's probably the number one thing that really, what could I have done? Because as parents, we want to protect our children all the way. And so she had so much guilt. And so what I learned from her is how to kind of unwrap that guilt and reframing it. So I walked her through what I saw as an objective bystander, to help her see what happened in a different way, and how it wasn't anything that she did that caused him to die. She did everything any loving mom would do.
Right.
And so that helped her to release some of that. But like I said, it was just giving it air, because when we hold these feelings inside, it just eats us up. Absolutely. In one way or another. And so my mom I love her dearly. She lives with me. She's going to be 96 early in July, on July 5th. Just adore her, but she never could smile widely. She never had that joy in life. And I really contribute a lot of that as to how she had that failed grief way back when. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that. That's such a beautiful term, failed grief. I mean, that's palpable. You can feel that. So since your mother lives with you now, and I know this from a conversation, that it is your granddaughter, if I'm not mistaken, granddaughter, that sits at the table, and your mom and her, those souls are talking to one another. Correct? Can you share that with us?
Oh, yes. So this is where I've seen the absolute true healing in my mother. And I'm so happy that it's happened before her transition.
Yeah.
Yes, we have 4 generations. My son and daughter-in-law own the home. My mother has a mother-in-law suite. My husband and I have the lower level. And so we all sit and have a community dinner every night. And so my granddaughter, she's now getting close to 15 months, but she sits across the table from my mom in her height chair, and they'll look at each other, and Grace, my granddaughter, will start talking in an unintelligible voice. We don't know what she's saying, but my mom connects with her, and they connect eye to eye. Yeah. And it's just so powerful. I mean, you can just feel this communication, and my mom grins. She shows her teeth. I've never seen this my whole life. I mean, I'm almost 62 years old, never have seen her grin a wide, joyous smile until she has been in connection with Grace. And so I believe that Grace is really my mom's final healing and finding true joy through the voice and eyes of a babe.
Oh, it's just, you can feel that. And that energy, and it's because that's exactly how I look at it, and that's how I look at it, is that it's all energy, that we're energy. It's just a transition from this physical plane into another plane. But that energetics, the essence of us, the us, the real us, communicates on such a soul level. And to be able to see that and to feel that, and then to experience that healing for your mom, to be able to see that smile where you actually see her teeth, is just like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. It just brings tears to my eyes. It's so beautiful. It is so beautiful.
I got tears.
Oh, yeah. It's like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. It's wow. I'm so grateful that your brother connected with you to let you know, and then all of the things that have happened afterwards, and especially the healing for your mom, to be able to in her final days, to be able to transition healed and maybe continuing to heal. But I don't know, I think that essence soul is 100% perfect, but at least this part of us that's conscious gets to know it differently. And to be able to give those feelings breath. It's so beautiful. Pat, I want to shift into the book, How Do I Survive? 7 Steps to Living After Child Loss. So how did you come about, because you have not personally lost a child, how did you come about writing this book? And it's beautiful, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I believe, so this is my belief, and we are all souls. I believe that my brother came back through me, and together our souls are we have our life purpose, our soul's purpose is to help, especially mothers, but families in their grief. I think he needed to come back. His spirit and soul needed to come back to help that. And my mom's part of that process. So working with my mom, I started understanding what are some of the things that I could help her delve into and to help peel away those layers and heal from some of these emotions that were holding her back. And I'm a life coach. And when I started in life coaching, I was not going to do a specialized niche. I just knew that I loved to coach people for my whole life. And when I hung up my shingle, just as right at the get-go, two of my first clients, my very two first clients were grieving moms. One was 5 years out from the death of her son, who was 13 years old. And the other one was a woman that she came to me because she was grieving the death of her father. But as we talked, her child, who was 7 or 8 had died 30 years prior. And so we realized, and as we started working together, that there's all this buried grief that was within her too, that had really created struggles in her life. And so we started working on that with no intention that's why we started the coaching process. And so as I worked with more and more moms would come to me and more families. And as I was doing this work, I could really see what are the things that were really helpful for people to find that healing on this earth. And I also saw what are some of the things that where I coined the phrase failed grief, where people really struggled. And so there were common denominators that I saw. So I took what I learned and put it into this book. What are the steps that can help really embrace the grieving as what it's there to do? And it is there for healing. That's what grief is. And grief is because we love so deeply. Had we never had loved, we wouldn't be grieving. But it really is a healing process. That's what it is, and that's what it's meant to do. So I took all of that and put that into these steps. And so, as I say, I'm not the creator of the steps, so to speak, in this program. It's all the beautiful families, and especially the grieving moms, who have really shared the wisdom with me. And I was able to take that and put it into form so that we can help more families down the road. So that they have the ability to talk about it and do these things to really, honor their children and work through the emotions that are there. Yeah.
Well, and you've done a beautiful job, because I remember when, I don't even think maybe it was 6 or 7 months, maybe 8 months out after my daughter's passing. And I hadn't really wanted to hear somebody else's story to help through the grief. But one day I knew that there was a church that was offering a speaker, and apparently he's a very highly sought after speaker about grief, and especially grieving the loss of a child. And it's like, oh, perfect. So I'll go and listen. And one of the very first things that he talked about was he lost his mom, I don't know, like maybe 6 months or a year. I don't remember. It seems like it was a short time prior to him coming in and doing this talk. And he said, so I understand. And I just wanted to jump up and rip his face off. It was like, if you don't like, your mom is not your child. That, like, what is that? And of course there's still I'm still in that piece of that anger, so it was great to be able to be angry at somebody, because I'd been angry enough at God. And I don't know if I ever really got angry with Dara. I really don't think that I did. I think I was really angry at God, and then dust and any of that other stuff. But and at the time, of course, I never saw it as a blessing. But he ended up becoming one of the biggest blessings in my life, because, and of course, I never said anything to him. I was very, thankful that he was speaking. But it allowed me to realize this anger piece in me is very much alive, and that I want to be careful with that, because you can't just go around lashing out at people because you've gone through a traumatic thing of losing a child. And so reading your book, you would think that you had lost a child. That's what I'm so taken aback with. because
Mhm.
it feels like you know the words, not the word, that's not what I meant to say at all. You know the feeling, and you are able to express it in a way that's comforting and loving and supporting, and not here's my theory, this is kind of what I. And for a person who has lost a child, that's because I do work with other people that have lost children, and it's painful to hear it that way. And that's not at all how your book is. It's so much as if you have lost a child. And so it makes me wonder also, through Greg, is this more of the information that you got from Greg to be able, because he was the child, and then working with your mom? Was it all of that coming together to be able to write this so powerfully?
I think so. I mean, that's my belief. I believe that we definitely are being divinely guided. And again, the women that I've worked with, especially the women, men also, but they've been my teachers. They've been my wisdom keepers. And so I was able to take that information, and I'm the child of a grieving family. So I have a unique perspective that way.
Yeah.
Because I'm the child of, so I see things maybe a little bit differently, but yet I totally get it. Working with my mom, and I don't know, I can't really describe it, but I just feel like I was inside of her. I could feel all of those emotions, even though I hadn't done it myself. And so maybe it is that soul connection between all of us. I mean, I truly believe that my brother came to share that because he was the child, and I don't know, I mean,
Yeah.
I just feel all of this was all divinely orchestrated.
Yes.
And I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing because that's what I've been called to do. And I know some people will say, but they all think that I've lost a child. And I don't know, for some reason, I just have such a deep connection with all of you who have. I feel like I don't understand, and I will never say that I understand, that I get it. Never. Because I don't. I've not experienced that. And everybody's experience is so different. Like you said, just real quickly, you said, you kind of wondered what it would have been like, if your daughter was 2 or 10 or
Right.
30 or 40. My mom always said he was only 4 months old, so it wasn't as bad for me as it was for someone who would have had, like her friends whose children had died, or my relatives whose children had died, in their teens or 20s or 30s. Mm. So that was her way of coping, I think, is that I didn't know him as well because I only had him for 4 months. Right. So everybody's grief is different, but I believe that, I truly believe that Greg is my soul in so many different ways, and this is why we're here, and if we can help people, that's what we're here to do.
Yeah. So beautiful. Well, you absolutely do. There's no question about it. You absolutely do. And being someone who walks that path, reading your book is it's powerfully healing, and it's just spot on. I love it. It's a beautiful book, and I highly recommend it. And I know exactly some people that this book needs to go out to. Yeah. And of course, we're going to run out of time because it seems like this time is just a blink of an eye and it's all over with. But you still feel, even now, you still feel that connection with Greg inside of you, correct? I mean, that's still there. You still carry him around with you.
Oh, yeah. I talk to him all the time.
Awesome. And and he answers you, do you hear? Because I know that there's times that I will ask my daughter a question and I'll hear the answer inside, which is no words whatsoever. And then there's other times I'll hear the answer inside and it is words. So how do you hear an answer with words, or a feeling, or a nudge to do something? How is it for you?
Like you, it's different. Sometimes it's a feeling, but it's words, but it's not words. Yeah. And it's very hard to describe that for people who may not have experienced that, but it's words. It's very clearly communicating, but it may not necessarily be the way you and I are speaking right now. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and I have no idea, because I believe everything is a miracle. I think that was Albert Einstein who had said that. You can view the world as everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle. And I don't know what this miracle and synchronistic moment is, but as we're having this conversation, there are two birds that are mating right outside of my window, and they'll fly up and then they jump down and then they fly up. And it's just life. It's more life. It's more life. And it's like, I love it. Oh, and especially in a conversation that's not always so easy to have. Pat, I'm so grateful that you are in my world, and that I have access to this book, and I have access to you, and how powerfully this can help heal other people's lives. And because you are a coach and you work with people that are grieving, and you are a funeral. I don't want to say director. I forgot my word.
Celebrant.
Yes, and I love how you do it. I don't know if you were doing this 12 years ago, but that would have been so beautiful because you're just in a panic. I never thought I would have to do this. Like, oh my God, where do you go and how do you do all of this stuff? I wish I would have known you. It would have been, but of course, everything happens exactly how it's supposed to happen. You have so much beautiful work that you're doing, and all of your information will be on the show notes, so people will be able to connect with you if they need to. Want you for coaching with grieving, for funerals or celebrations of life, all of that. The easiest way to get in touch with you before the show notes are out, can you share that with us?
Yep, just email me, and it is Pat Sheveland, all one word, at msn.com.
Okay, perfect. And then that information will for surely be in the show notes. And then there's also a link that will be in the show notes for a free ebook for the How Do I Survive? 7 Steps to Living After Child Loss. And I guess I've lost a child, so I know it's very comforting. Maybe even if you haven't lost a child, a loss of anything. Because you have powerful words, powerful statements in here, and all of us have lost something, and all of us have grieved something in our life. And I want to thank you. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I feel so, I'm just very grateful. Thank you, Pat.
I am so grateful to you and feeling so blessed and so glad that we connected. This is how it's meant to be, right?
Yes, absolutely. And as soon as it is possible, I would love to sit down and have a cup of coffee and just a conversation and just be in that energy. And so I look forward to doing that very soon.
Yes, I look forward to that too.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And listeners, Pat's information, all of it will be in the show notes. Powerful woman, and the real deal. And I love being able to bring people on that are all about healing and helping and helping this world to be the most beautiful place that it is supposed to be. So thank you again, Pat, and thank you, listeners. Wishing you the most beautiful day and most beautiful week, and we will see you here again next week. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you for spending time with us today. Please go to nadahogan.com for show notes and other information you can use right away. If you like what you heard here, please subscribe to our show, and don't forget to rate and review right there on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your shows. And don't forget to tell your friends about it. We'll see you next week.